Now it's time for me to welcome you for the final session of the Gaza Tribunal here in Istanbul. For the next 3 to 4 days, we will be hearing, witnessing, we will be discussing and analyzing everything that has been going on in Gaza for the past 2 years mostly, and for the past period in general. During this conference, in 4 days, we will reach the final verdict for the war crimes and genocide happening in Gaza by Israel at the moment. And at this point, after saying welcome again, I will call Richard Falk, President of the Gaza Tribunal, to address you and wish you a good morning.
Good morning and welcome. It is a special honor for me to welcome all of you, and especially our distinguished jury of conscience, to this final session of the Gaza People's Tribunal. We are also grateful to those who have traveled long distances to participate as witnesses and experts. I also want to pay tribute to all of the dedicated members of the steering committee and our 3 chambers that have worked tirelessly these past months to make the Gaza Tribunal become a reality. We are grateful to the sponsors who initially came to invite Hilal Elver and myself to take on this responsibility of organizing the tribunal, a task we have been devoted to for more than a year. Without the support of Taha Ayhan and his associates, as well as the Islamic Cooperative Youth Forum, we would not have had the resources to make this tribunal a reality. We thank him and his associates also for upholding the pledge of political independence from any interference by politicians in this endeavor and in our efforts. Finally, we thank the University of Istanbul for providing us with the hosting auspices. We convene at a critical moment of paused genocidal assault on the Palestinian civilian population of occupied Gaza, with lethal spillover effects in the West Bank. Although thankful for this pause in bombardment and drone missiles and surveillance and disastrous effects consisting of prior periodic cutoffs in the delivery of humanitarian aid, it is far from enough. We should be on our guard against supposing that the genocide is over or that a just peace is on its way. This is the time for vigilance, not a time to suppose that the urgent challenge posed by the Gaza genocide has become a matter of history. We must remind ourselves that the surviving Gazan population continues to be struggling day by day with homelessness, hunger, disease, injuries, the pain of lost and mutilated loved ones, induced chaos, and a variety of Israeli violent provocations. Gazans continue to be confronted with the instabilities of an ultra-dangerous wasteland, undoubtedly haunted by fears that the high-intensity genocide of preceding months could resume at any moment. The global media, the Arab and Muslim majority countries, have shifted their focus from genocide to the Trump diplomacy, creating this widespread illusion that peacefulness is taking over. The Trump initiative has yielded a fragile ceasefire, to be sure, properly welcomed by most of the world, and especially by the desperate survivors of the past 2 years in Gaza. The Trump diplomacy claims to go further, boasting of having found a solution for the underlying conflict by way of a 20-point plan crafted with the approval of Israel's government, a plan that harkens back to colonial times. It is even overseen by a so-called Board of Peace headed by Donald Trump to be administered under the direction of Tony Blair. There are no provisions for accountability in relation to the crimes that have been committed. Quite the contrary. Both the perpetrator of genocide and the chief enabler have suddenly assumed the mantle of peacemaker before the stunned eyes and ears of the world. We should be aware that Israel has not even renounced the genocidal goals of establishing Greater Israel by absorbing the Palestinian territories within its sovereign territorial space. It is against this Janus-faced background that the final session of the GPT meets. Janus is the Roman god who faced in two directions. One face looked at what has gone before. The other face looks at what is to come. It is the god of transitions and also of false hopes. So it is with the Gaza Tribunal. In the coming days, the jury will listen to survivor testimony from persons who have lived through this terrible ordeal in Gaza that started days after the Hamas attack of October 7th, 2023. It will also hear expert witnesses addressing the main components of genocide as the devastation of more than 83% of Gaza homes, the destruction of water, electricity, and sanitation infrastructure, the deliberate targeting of hospitals, places of worship, heritage sites, schools and universities, as well as assassinations carried out against journalists, doctors, health and aid delivery personnel, and truth tellers, as well as UNRWA staff members. We wish to make clear that the Gaza Tribunal is not trying to compete with or mimic conventional courts by adjudicating between antagonistic parties from a starting point of neutrality. It is openly partisan and does not proceed from the adage, innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. At the same time, we take note of the judicial professionalism of the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court that provides a firm grounding in international law for the work of the Gaza Tribunal and its pronouncements. The Gaza Tribunal came into being as an act of conscience on the part of unaffiliated persons in civil society around the world and guided by a multinational steering committee and an advisory policy council. From the start, it has benefited immensely from the robust and persuasive participation of its Palestinian members with respect to all tribunal activities. The Gaza Tribunal should be considered as one of several instruments for providing people with a truthful account of the horrifying events unfolding in Gaza over the past 2 years, and acting as a call to action on behalf of a justice-oriented, durable peace achieved through Palestinian participation throughout, which has not been allowed to occur at this point to any extent. Such an undertaking partakes of the same motivations that inform the struggle of fearless journalists to file commentaries on the images of daily atrocities happening in Gaza. In this sense, the GPT is a form of societal resistance to state propaganda and media bias, thus which selectively filter news imports so as to convey a pro-Israeli slant. A recent attempt is the incredible attention to the relative and joyful reception of 20 living Israeli hostages taken captive during the Hamas-led attack. This attention, confronted with treating the comparable release of 1,900 Palestinians, mostly arbitrarily imprisoned and badly abused, without being worthy of the slightest notice. The contrast, the double standards in reporting this hostage prisoner release reinforces the central aim of the Israel propaganda machine to present itself as victim rather than as perpetrator. The Gaza Tribunal also gives credit to the UN efforts to circumvent the geopolitics that paralyze preventive enforcement actions that could have challenged the genocide at its initial stage. As long as the geopolitical muscle of the Western liberal democracies stood shoulder to shoulder with Israel's military campaign, the UN was politically paralyzed. What the UN did do, and deserves credit for doing, is to join the symbolic politics of the legitimacy war that is won or lost by the side that gains control of the legal and moral public discourse. The UN did this by the special procedures of the Human Rights Council that established a Gaza Commission of Inquiry composed of international law and human rights experts that released a month ago an 82-page report that documented in detail the Gaza genocide. Even more dramatic were the 3 superbly researched reports on the genocide submitted by Francesca Albanese, the unpaid UN Special Rapporteur. Despite facing taunting harassments and hurtful defamation, Ms. Albanese bravely was threatened. Yes, I can. Was bravely threatened in her heroic efforts to carry the truth to a wider public to counter the official lies and propaganda. For her efforts, she was subjected to unprecedented sanctions by the US government, barring entry to the US to deliver her report to the General Assembly and having her American assets frozen, all in violation of the US obligation to uphold the host country treaty. In another brazen move, the US denied visas to representatives of the PLO while welcoming the Israeli Prime Minister. Unsurprisingly, the President of Colombia called for the movement of the UN from the US, which prompted Washington to take punitive action in the form of the cutoff of all economic aid to Colombia. As the proponents of the genocide in Gaza use their hard and soft power to make people swallow lies, the Gaza Tribunal, UN special rapporteurs, and indeed journalists and witnesses struggle with words, resistance, and solidarity to make truth triumph. The gradual consensus that Israel has become a pariah or rogue state is solid evidence that Palestinians are winning or have won the legitimacy war. The record of colonial wars since 1945 is that the winner of the legitimacy war eventually controls the political outcome, although often at the cost of great human suffering. The US should have learned this lesson in Vietnam, where it dominated all phases of the military combat and yet lost the war. It is against this background that we have invited distinguished moral and legal authority figures to be members of our jury of conscience. The jury will hear in the coming days from witnesses and experts that will provide substantive support for allegations of genocide and crimes against humanity. At the end of the process, the jury will deliver its verdict on the salient questions emergent from the testimonies that they have heard, and later deliver a consensus document that sets forth their reasoning in more detail. This will be included in the book that is planned to be published as soon as possible that summarizes the work of the Gaza Tribunal. It is our hope that each juror will also be moved to write a reflective essay for the book that gives their personalized account of their experience in confronting genocide in this manner. The Gaza Tribunal aims at more than a confirmation of the genocide and making a contribution to the legitimacy war. Present conditions in Gaza and the West Bank require more than words or symbolic politics. It requires action and commitment. Israel is continuing behind the screen of this deceptive diplomacy of supposed peacemaking to pursue the Zionist endgame of Palestinian erasure and creative and greater Israel. The Knesset is on the apparent verge of passing a bill calling upon the government to annex the West Bank. And its repeated violations of the ceasefire in recent days have given evidence that it's not pursuing the path of peace, but rather seems to be seeking the provocation of Hamas to provide a pretext for renewing the full fury of its genocidal assault. In conclusion, we hope the jury of conscience will share our sense of urgency to expose the realities not only of what has happened, but what is happening. Now is the time for solidarity, initiatives with the Palestinian struggle for basic rights. Now is the time to insist on Israeli accountability for the commission of the crime of crimes. Now is the time to expose the moral hypocrisy of the complicit supporter of prolonged and transparent genocide carried out against an essentially helpless and innocent population. We pledge our support for the jury of conscience and to carry on with the work of this tribunal, and thank all of you who have helped us carry the process this far. The struggle goes on. Justice will prevail. Thank you.